It was a bright and sunny afternoon when 8-year-old Zara Nightingale stepped out of the black car with her small pink backpack and blinking sneakers. Her curly hair bounced with each step, and in her hand, she clutched something very special. A black American Express card, one that her mother had given her with care and trust. "Pick out anything you like, sweetie," her mom had said that morning, kneeling down to kiss her forehead. "You've worked so hard this year. You deserve something special for your birthday." Zara had smiled big and hugged her mother tight. "I want to learn games and science just like you, Mommy." Her mom had chuckled and nodded. "Then go to Tech Zone and pick the best learning tablet you can find. I'll be in meetings, but if you need anything, call me." So here she was, standing outside the glass doors of Tech Zone Electronics, her heart beating with excitement. Her birthday was only 2 days away. She felt so grown up, walking in alone. What she didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that inside that very store, someone's heart was filled not with kindness, but with bitterness, jealousy, and hate. Someone who would change Zara's life forever. The store was buzzing. Families were shopping for laptops. Teenagers browsed the latest phones. Parents compared prices on printers. Bright lights hung from the ceiling, and rows of blinking gadgets lined the walls. Zara walked in, her light-up shoes flashing pink with every step. She passed by the TVs, past the phones, until she reached the tablet section. Her eyes lit up. There were so many choices. Tablets in blue, purple, silver, and even glittery rose gold. Some had pens, some had keyboards. She walked slowly, examining them one by one, reading every sign carefully, just like her mom had taught her. Then she saw it, a sleek silver tablet with a purple case. It was beautiful. The screen was bright and clear. It said, "Great for kids. Learning and fun." "Perfect," Zara whispered, her voice full of joy. She turned to the young lady behind the counter, a cashier named Aubrey who was stocking accessories nearby. Zara smiled shyly and said, "Hi, miss. Can you help me, please? I'm looking for a tablet to learn and play games." Aubrey looked down and saw the adorable child with big brown eyes and a hopeful smile. Her heart melted. "Of course, sweetheart," Aubrey replied warmly. "This one right here is amazing. It has great apps for school and fun games, too. What's your name?" "Zara," she said proudly. "I'm buying it with my mom's card. She let me pick one out myself." Aubrey smiled and nodded. "You're very responsible, Zara. That's a big deal." But their happy moment didn't last long, because watching from behind the customer service desk was Scarlett Ashford. Scarlett Ashford was 45 years old, the store manager, and deeply unhappy. She had been working at Tech Zone for 15 years, and in those years, something inside her had started to rot. She didn't like cheerful customers. She didn't like happy families. And most of all, she didn't like anyone who looked like they were doing well in life. Her marriage had ended. Her grown kids didn't call much. She struggled with money and health problems. And somehow, she had started blaming others for her pain, especially people of color. When Scarlett saw Zara walk in alone, a confident little black girl, clearly from a wealthy family, something inside her twisted. She didn't see an 8-year-old child. She saw something she hated. She narrowed her eyes. "What is that kid doing here alone?" she muttered. "Probably trouble." And then she saw it. Zara holding a black credit card. Scarlett's jaw tightened. That card, the one for rich people, the kind she had never owned in her life. There was no way, she thought, that this little girl had it legally. Scarlett's anger boiled. She stepped out from behind the counter, straightened her badge, and marched over. Zara didn't see her at first. She was smiling and talking with Aubrey about the apps that help with science and spelling. She held up the tablet she loved and was about to walk toward the cashier when Scarlett blocked her path. "Where are your parents, little girl?" Scarlett demanded. Zara blinked, surprised. "My mommy's at work," she said politely. "She let me come shopping. She gave me her card." Scarlett's eyes narrowed. "Let me see that card." Zara, still trusting, handed it over carefully. It had her mother's name, Celeste Nightingale, printed in shiny silver letters. Scarlett stared at it like it was fake. "And I suppose you expect me to believe this is yours?" she snapped. Zara's smile faded. "My mommy gave it to me. She said I could pick anything." Scarlett's voice grew louder. "What's your mother's name? Where does she work? How do I know you didn't steal this?" Now people started turning to look. Zara stepped back. Her hands trembled. I'm not supposed to tell strangers, but I didn't steal anything. Mommy says I'm a good girl." Scarlett's voice became sharp and cutting. "No good girl walks into a store alone with a credit card. You're lying." Aubrey stepped forward, trying to calm things. "Maybe we can call the number on the card to confirm." "Stay out of this," Scarlett barked. Now the whole store was staring. Some pulled out their phones. Others whispered. A woman with 2 kids began filming. Scarlett pointed at Zara. "You're a thief, and I'm calling the police." Zara's heart dropped. Her hands went cold. Her knees began to shake. "No, please. I'm not a thief," she said softly. "I just wanted to buy my birthday present." Scarlett ignored her. She turned and began dialing. "Yes, police? I have a child here who stole a card." Zara began crying. "I want my mommy." Her tiny voice cracked. "I just want my mommy." That's when she reached out. Not to fight, not to push, just to touch Scarlett's arm. Maybe if she begged, she thought, the mean lady would believe her, and that's when it happened. Scarlett slapped her. The sound of the slap was like a gunshot. Loud, sudden, cruel. Zara stumbled back. Her cheek burned, her face twisted in shock. She didn't even cry at first, just held her face, stunned. Then the sobs came. The room exploded. "What is wrong with you? Call the police on her. You hit a child." Phones were filming. People were yelling. But all Zara could do was cry and say over and over, "I didn't do anything bad. I want my mommy. I didn't do anything." And somewhere in a tall glass building across town, Zara's mom, Celeste Nightingale, CEO of Nightingale Enterprises, billionaire tech genius, and the fiercest mother on earth, felt her phone buzz. She picked it up, and her heart went still. It was a message from her assistant who had just picked up Zara's emergency call. "Ma'am, something's happened to your daughter." Celeste Nightingale had been in the middle of the most important boardroom presentation of her life when the message came in. She stood at the head of a long glass table, wearing a navy blue suit, speaking confidently about a billion-dollar merger between Nightingale Enterprises and a global tech firm. Her voice had been steady, her numbers sharp. Every executive in the room had been hanging on her every word. But none of that mattered the moment her assistant, Margaret, rushed into the room holding a phone, her face pale. "Ma'am, it's Zara," Margaret whispered, not caring that she was interrupting a room full of corporate giants. Celeste's breath caught in her throat. Her whole body tensed. "What do you mean? What happened to my daughter?" she asked, stepping away from the table. Without waiting for permission, Margaret's voice shook as she explained. "Zara just called the office line. She was crying. She said someone hurt her at TechZone Electronics, and she wants to come home." The entire room froze. Celeste didn't ask another question. She turned, grabbed her keys, and walked out of that room without saying goodbye. Her heart was racing. Her mind was already 10 steps ahead, calculating how long it would take to get to her daughter. She called her private security team. Then she called her driver. By the time she reached the elevator, she was no longer the calm CEO everyone respected. She was a mother on a mission, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was more powerful than that. Meanwhile, back at TechZone, chaos still filled the store. Zara was curled up in the arms of the cashier, Aubrey, her small body trembling from fear. Her cheek still stung from Scarlett's slap. The red mark stood out sharply against her dark skin. Every time she tried to stop crying, another wave of fear crashed over her. She couldn't understand what had happened. She had done everything right. She had spoken politely. She had used the card her mommy gave her. She had even tried to call her mother. But all anyone saw was what they wanted to see, a little black girl with a credit card and no parent in sight. Scarlett Ashford, the manager who had hit her, stood with her arms crossed, still trying to justify what she had done. "I had every right," she muttered. "She was being disruptive, probably trying to steal. I was protecting the store's merchandise." But nobody was agreeing with her anymore. Even the customers who had first stayed silent were now looking at her like she was a monster. Videos were being uploaded. Phones were recording. Zara's face, her innocent, tear-streaked, terrified face, was now the center of a storm that Scarlett could not stop. Aubrey had managed to get through to Celeste's assistant. She whispered into Zara's ear, "Your mommy is coming, sweetheart. She's on her way. Just hold on." Zara nodded weakly, but she still looked broken. She kept whispering the same thing under her breath like a prayer. "I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong." The police hadn't arrived yet, but the sirens could be heard in the distance. Scarlett still believed they would come to remove Zara from the store. She truly thought she would be praised for catching a thief. She had no idea who Zara's mother was. 12 minutes later, the automatic doors to Tech Zone slid open again, and the atmosphere in the store shifted. The room fell quiet, like the air had been sucked out. A tall black woman in a sharp designer suit stepped through the entrance with the energy of a storm. Her high heels clicked with purpose. Her eyes scanned the store with a mother's fury. And when she saw her daughter, crumpled in a stranger's arms, the pain on her face was unbearable. "Zara!" Celeste called out. The moment Zara heard her mother's voice, she broke into a run, crying out, "Mommy!" She launched herself into Celeste's arms, sobbing into her chest. Celeste dropped to her knees and held her tight, whispering, "I'm here now. Mommy's here. You're safe, baby." Everyone stood frozen, watching the reunion. Some people cried, quietly. Others put their phones down, but Scarlett still didn't get it. She marched over, her tone filled with fake authority. "About time you showed up. Your daughter has caused nothing but trouble, and I had no choice but to discipline her." Celeste stood up slowly, shielding her daughter with one arm. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Discipline?" she asked, her eyes cold. "You hit my child." Scarlett crossed her arms. "She had a stolen credit card. She wouldn't stop crying. I had to maintain order. That's when the police walked in. 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female. The male officer, Rodriguez, quickly took in the scene. The crying child, the red handprint, the group of customers still filming. He walked over to Celeste. "Ma'am, what's going on here?" Celeste handed him her ID. "Celeste Nightingale. This is my daughter, Zara. She was shopping for her birthday when this woman struck her in the face." Rodriguez's eyes widened. "You're the Celeste Nightingale?" he said, glancing at her card. He had heard of her. Almost everyone had. She ran one of the most powerful tech companies in the country. But more than that, she was known for protecting her community and her employees. He looked at Zara. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Zara sniffled and nodded slowly. "She hit me. I just wanted a tablet. I didn't do anything wrong." Her voice broke hearts. Rodriguez turned to Scarlett. "Did you strike this child, ma'am?" Scarlett lifted her chin. "I disciplined her. She was being disruptive and possibly stealing. I had no choice." "You had no right to put your hands on a child," Rodriguez said sternly. "Turn around. You're under arrest for assault on a minor," Scarlett gasped. "What? No, I was just doing my job." Rodriguez took out his handcuffs. "You don't get to hit kids because you think they're stealing, especially not when they're holding their own mother's credit card." As the cuffs clicked around Scarlett's wrists, Dante Mororo, the assistant manager, finally stepped out from the back. His face was pale. He recognized Celeste immediately. His voice cracked as he stammered, "Miss Nightingale, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I wasn't here when it happened." Celeste turned slowly to face him. "You're her assistant manager. You let this woman treat children like criminals. Did you step in to stop it?" Dante looked down. "No, I didn't know what to do." "You're part of the problem," Celeste replied coldly. "And I'm not just a customer, Mr. Moraro. I own this entire shopping center. This is my property, and your time working here is officially over." Dante nearly collapsed. Scarlett was crying now as the officers walked her toward the door. She looked around at the customers, the phones filming her, the disapproving faces. She had thought she could bully a child and walk away. Now the whole world would know who she really was. Outside, a black SUV pulled up. Celeste's personal security team arrived, followed by a van full of lawyers. Cameras from local news stations had started to appear, tipped off by the viral videos online. The story was already spreading. Inside, Celeste crouched down next to Zara. She touched her daughter's swollen cheek gently, her eyes filled with pain. "I'm so sorry, baby. You were so brave." Zara leaned into her mother and whispered, "I just wanted to get the tablet you said I could. I didn't know why she was yelling at me. I tried to call." Celeste hugged her again. "You did everything?" "Right, Zara. Everything. I'm going to make sure this never happens to another child again." And as the cameras rolled and the officers led Scarlett away, a new story began. Not just about what had happened in the store, but about what would come next. Because Celeste Nightingale wasn't done, not by a long shot. The video was only 2 minutes long, but it exploded like a lightning bolt across the internet. It began with a crying 8-year-old girl clutching her cheek, a red handprint glowing across her face. Then came the angry voice of a white store manager shouting accusations. The final moment? That same manager being arrested on the spot as the little girl sobbed, "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted my birthday present." Within 30 minutes, the video had 1 million views. Within 2 hours, it was on the front page of every major social platform. The hashtag Wada Justice for Zara began trending globally, and people were angry. Angry. In a way the world hadn't seen in a long time. Celeste Nightingale didn't speak to the media that day. Not yet. Her priority was Zara. After the arrest, after the police had taken statements and the store emptied out, Celeste took her daughter home. She turned off her phone. She pulled Zara into bed with her and held her through the night. No business meetings, no news interviews, just her and Zara. In the dark, with the soft hum of the air conditioning and the gentle rise and fall of her daughter's breath, Celeste listened as Zara whispered her fears. "Mommy, are other kids going to be hit like me? Will the lady come back? Am I bad because I'm brown?" Each question stabbed Celeste in the heart, and each time she gave the same answer. "You are good, you are beautiful, and Mommy is going to make sure this never happens again." By the next morning, Celeste's face was on every major TV network, whether she wanted it to be or not. Journalists had uncovered her identity within hours of the video going viral. Headlines exploded. Black CEO's daughter slapped in tech. Store. Manager arrested after assaulting billionaire's child. Zara Nightingale, the little girl who sparked a national conversation. People were demanding action. Protesters gathered outside TechZone stores across the country. Parents wrote letters to lawmakers. Celebrities shared the video with statements of support. Athletes, actors, teachers, and doctors all had the same message. This could have been my child. But while the world was reacting with rage and heartbreak, Celeste was building something much bigger, something that would turn that anger into change. At 10 a.m. sharp, she walked into the gleaming lobby of Nightingale Enterprises. She wore a white pantsuit. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was calm but unreadable. Reporters were already outside the building shouting her name, but she ignored them. Upstairs, in the executive conference room, her top legal team was waiting. Her PR director, her property management head, her CTO. They had never seen her like this before. "We're not here to protect the brand," she said, pacing in front of them like a general preparing for battle. "We're here to make sure no other child goes through what my daughter did. We're going to do this loud, and we're going to do it right." She laid out her plan in 3 bold steps. First, Tech Zone. Electronics would be removed from every Nightingale-owned shopping center across the country, effective immediately. Her real estate team blinked in shock. That meant pulling leases from nearly 300 locations. "I don't care if it costs us money," Celeste said. "We're not profiting off companies that tolerate racism and violence against children." Second, she would be launching the Zara Protocol initiative, a set of rules and training standards for every retail employee working in a Nightingale property. Under the Zara Protocol, no child under 16 could be questioned or touched by staff without a guardian present. Every store would have to complete anti-bias training, and all employees would be required to learn de-escalation tactics focused on children. Failure to comply would result in removal from her properties. And third, Celeste would host a national press conference, not to share her pain, but to share her daughter's voice. "You're going to let Zara speak?" one advisor asked gently. "No," Celeste replied, her voice quiet. "I'm going to speak for Zara, because right now there are thousands of children just like her who don't have a mother with power. I have the platform, and now I'm going to use it." By the following morning, the stage was set. The press conference was held at Nightingale Plaza, in front of a massive backdrop of Zara's smiling face, taken on her last birthday before the incident. She wore her favorite pink dress, her dimples showing, a sparkle in her eyes. That image was now iconic. The world had seen her crying, broken, and terrified. But this was the face Celeste wanted people to remember. Strong, joyful, and full of promise. Dozens of cameras lined the lawn. Reporters from CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and even international stations sat elbow to elbow. The live stream had over 500,000 viewers by the time Celeste stepped up to the podium. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Celeste Nightingale. I am the founder and CEO of Nightingale Enterprises. But more importantly, I am the mother of an 8-year-old girl named Zara, a little girl who walked into a store with joy in her heart and walked out with a bruise on her face, and a fear she had never known before." She paused. Her eyes scanned the crowd. And she is not alone. Celeste spoke for 17 minutes. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply told the truth. She described Zara's experience in detail. She played audio of Zara's emergency call. And then she did something no one expected. She played security footage of the incident, frame by frame. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the audience saw Scarlett slap Zara in slow motion. They saw the child flinch, stumble, and collapse into tears. They heard the insults, the threats, the cruelty. There was no room left for doubt. This was not an accident. This was not a misunderstanding. This was an adult who decided that a black child didn't belong in her store, and she acted on that hate, Celeste said. But now she will face consequences. Because my child is not invisible, none of our children are. She then announced the Zara Protocol Initiative, the removal of Tech Zone electronics from Nightingale properties, and the immediate creation of the Zara Nightingale Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to protecting children of color from discrimination and mistreatment in public spaces. The press conference ended in thunderous applause. Not polite claps, not corporate applause. Real, raw, emotional clapping from people who had witnessed something powerful. a mother turning her child's trauma into a movement. That night, news anchors called Celeste's speech historic. Parents flooded social media with stories of their own children being followed in stores, accused of stealing, or treated like criminals. Teachers shared videos of Zara's speech in classrooms. Civil rights organizations reached out to partner with the foundation. But back in their quiet home, Zara sat in her pajamas, curled up on the couch with her mom, watching cartoons. She had no idea that her face was on magazine covers. She didn't know she had become the symbol of a movement. She only knew that her mommy had kept her promise, that the mean lady was gone, that the world had listened. She leaned her head against Celeste's arm and whispered, "I love you, Mommy." Celeste smiled, kissed her forehead, and whispered back, "I love you more, and I'm so proud of you." Because even though Zara didn't speak on stage that day, her face, her tears, and her strength had spoken louder than any words ever could, and the world was listening. 3 days had passed since the world first saw Zara Nightingale's tearful face and the red handprint across her cheek. 3 days since millions of strangers cried with her, stood with her, and began to speak her name with fierce love and protection. And for the first time in her young life, Zara felt something she didn't quite have words for yet, but it felt like power. At home, things were quiet. Celeste had kept the media far away from Zara. They played board games, they built puzzles. They read books. Celeste answered every one of Zara's innocent questions with the calm strength only a mother can give. But outside their home, everything had changed. People were marching in cities across the country. Not just for Zara, but for every child who had been mistreated and doubted and humiliated simply for existing while black. Handwritten signs appeared in protest crowds. "I believe Zara." "Our kids deserve safety too. Not your stereotype." Celebrities reposted the video with captions like, "Never again" and "Protect our children." Schools added new lessons on racial bias and empathy. City councils began discussing ordinances inspired by the Zara Protocol. The moment had become a movement. Meanwhile, Scarlett Ashford sat in a jail cell alone. Her world had crumbled. TechZone had officially fired her. The company had issued a public apology, but it wasn't enough. Not when every time someone Googled her name, the words child abuser and racist store manager came up. She no longer had a job. No lawyer wanted to represent her publicly. Her face was known worldwide, and not in a way anyone would envy. Her relatives stopped answering her calls. Her neighbors avoided her. And even in jail, she had been placed in isolation for her own safety. Scarlett couldn't believe how fast her life had fallen apart. "I didn't mean it," she told herself over and over again. "I was just doing my job." But deep down, even she knew that wasn't true. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had made a decision. A cruel, ugly decision to treat a child like a criminal because of the color of her skin, and now the world believed that child, not her. Zara, meanwhile, was healing. But it wasn't easy. That night, she had a nightmare. In the dream, she was back in the store, alone again. Scarlett towered over her, yelling, her voice booming like thunder. Zara cried out, trying to run, but her shoes were stuck. The credit card in her hand crumbled like paper. The people in the store just watched. No one helped. Zara woke up screaming. Celeste was there in seconds, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "It's okay, baby. I'm here. You're safe." "I was back in the store, Mommy," Zara sobbed. "She was yelling again, and no one helped me." Celeste didn't try to explain the dream away. Instead, she said, "I believe you, and I know that was scary, but that dream isn't real. What's real is that you are brave, you are loved, and that lady will never hurt you again. Ever." Zara hugged her tight and nodded. It would take time, but she was learning that fear didn't have the last word. Love did. The next day, something happened that helped more than any therapy session ever could. Celeste took Zara to a nearby community center where a group of mothers and children had gathered for a support event called Voices of the Young. When Zara walked into the room, 100 people stood up and clapped. Little kids ran up to her with drawings. One little girl handed her a crayon picture of Zara wearing a crown. "You're a princess," she said proudly. A boy about her age gave her a bracelet made of plastic beads. "You were so strong," he said. "You're my hero." Zara didn't know what to say. She stood quietly next to her mother, looking around at all these kind faces. "I didn't think anyone would care about me," she whispered. Celeste knelt down beside her. "Oh, baby, you have no idea how many people care. You gave them courage. You made them believe their voices matter too." The community leaders had prepared something special. On a large projector screen, they played video messages from children around the country. One by one, kids of all ages said her name. "Thank you, Zara, for being brave. You helped me tell my teacher someone was being mean. You're not alone. You matter." Zara started crying, but they were happy tears. She leaned her head on her mom's shoulder and whispered, "I feel like I'm not invisible anymore." "You were never invisible," Celeste said softly. "But now the world can finally see you." Later that evening, as they were leaving, a reporter from a major news channel approached. "Miss Nightingale, would you allow Zara to say a few words? Just a short message for the children watching?" Celeste knelt beside Zara. "Only if you want to, sweetheart. No pressure." Zara looked up at the cameras. She took a deep breath, then she nodded. A crew member gently handed her a microphone. The crowd grew quiet. The cameras focused. Zara's voice was small but clear. "Hi, my name is Zara Nightingale. I'm 8 years old. I got hurt in a store. Not because I did something bad, but because someone thought I didn't belong. But I do belong. We all do. If someone's ever mean to you just because of your color or your hair or your clothes, tell someone. Tell your parents. Tell your teacher. And remember, being kind is stronger than being mean, I promise." There was a moment of still silence, and then applause. Big, loud, beautiful applause. Celeste clapped too, her hands shaking slightly as she wiped away tears. In that moment, she didn't see a child who had been victimized. She saw a leader, a symbol, a voice the world couldn't ignore. That night, Zara's speech played on national television. News anchors called it the moment America needed. Commentators described it as the beginning of a new kind of activism led by the youngest among us. One clip went viral again. The moment Zara said, "We all belong," celebrities began donating to the Zara Nightingale Foundation. A well-known actress pledged $1 million and offered to host a gala in Zara's honor. An NBA player recorded a video saying, "Zara, you're the bravest little sister I've ever seen. Keep being you." But it wasn't just the rich and famous. Teachers wrote lesson plans about bias using her story. Parents sat their kids down and said, "Watch this. This is how you stand up for yourself." Zara's face was painted on murals in 2 different cities. Street artists wrote her name in bright colors on walls. Zara belongs. And through it all, Celeste remained focused, not on fame, not on attention, but on building real protection for children like hers. Within days, the Zara Protocol was adopted. By 4 national retail chains, stores began training staff on how to interact with children respectfully. More than 20 school districts signed up for anti-bias workshops funded by Zara's foundation. And the U.S. Department of Education reached out, asking Celeste to advise on new safety guidelines for young shoppers. The world had shifted, and it all started with one little girl, one red handprint, one voice that refused to stay silent. Zara didn't understand all the politics. She didn't know about policies and platforms. All she knew was that people were listening. People believed her. And because they believed her, she began to believe in herself again. The courtroom was quiet, the air heavy with tension. Reporters waited in the back rows, lawyers whispered behind piles of paperwork, and at the front of the room sat Scarlett Ashford, her shoulders hunched, eyes hollow. For the past few weeks, she had been the most hated woman in America. Her face had been played on every screen, her name dragged through every headline. But now, it was time for the legal system to have its say. She wore a plain gray suit, far different from her polished store manager outfit. Her hair, once carefully styled, was now dull and messy. She looked like a woman who had lost everything, and in truth she had. Job, home, reputation, friends. Everything had collapsed the moment her hand struck that little girl's face. But even now, even after all that had happened, Scarlett hadn't apologized. Not once. In every interview request, she had refused to speak. When asked by officers, she claimed she was following protocol. During initial hearings, she let her lawyer speak for her. The woman who once shouted at a child now said nothing at all, but her silence only made things worse. The world had moved on from just anger. Now it wanted answers. Why? Why would a grown woman target a child like that? Why did no one stop her? Why did she feel so entitled to hurt someone else's daughter? Scarlett's trial had drawn attention not just because of what happened, but because of what it represented. It wasn't just about one slap. It was about the decades of quiet harm, the kind that never made the news. The suspicious glances, the accusations whispered in aisles, the children followed by employees, the assumptions, the fear, the shame. And finally, people were talking about it. The courtroom doors opened again, and in walked Celeste Nightingale with Zara by her side, holding her hand. Zara wore a soft blue dress with butterflies along the hem. Her hair was pulled back into a bun, and her eyes, though still tender, held something stronger now. Resilience. They sat quietly. Celeste kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "You don't have to speak unless you want to. I'm here." Zara nodded. The judge entered and everyone rose. The trial began. Scarlett's lawyer tried to argue that Scarlett had no violent history, that she was under stress, that she panicked. But the prosecutor was calm and steady. She played the security footage again. She presented the medical report of Zara's bruised cheek. She showed printed tweets from Scarlett's now-deleted account. Comments she had made in the past that revealed deeply rooted bias. Things like, "You can always tell who's going to steal. Just look at them." Then came the most powerful part of the trial, the witness statements. Aubrey, the cashier, stood nervously on the witness stand. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger. "I tried to speak up, but Scarlett told me to stay out of it. Zara was so polite, so kind. She didn't do anything wrong. And I'll never forget the sound when Scarlett hit her. It was horrible." Then Indigo Blackwell, the woman who recorded the video, testified. "I've got 2 kids of my own," she said. "If someone hadn't filmed that, who knows what the story would have become? Would they have believed Zara? Or would they have believed the adult who said she was lying?" Finally, Celeste took the stand. The room fell into silence. She spoke slowly, carefully, each word deliberate. "I am not here for revenge. I am here for justice," she said. "My daughter walked into that store with joy and came out with trauma. She thought she had done something wrong. That's the part that haunts me the most, not just the bruise, but the doubt that someone put into my child's heart." She paused, then turned to look directly at Scarlett. "You had every opportunity to treat her with kindness, with decency. You could have asked questions, you could have called the number on the card, but instead, you chose violence. You chose humiliation. And now you must face the consequences of that choice." Scarlett didn't look up. She sat there, still silent. Even now, after hearing everything, she said nothing. No apology, no tears, no remorse. Zara sat in the back row beside her mom, listening quietly. Her small hands were folded in her lap. She didn't understand all the legal words, but she understood this. Her voice mattered. Her truth mattered. And even though Scarlett wouldn't speak, the world had finally spoken for her. The judge ruled quickly. Scarlett Ashford was found guilty of assault on a minor, discrimination in a public space, and reckless endangerment. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay restitution, a symbolic amount, but one that made headlines. But more than the sentence, it was the message that mattered. For every child who had ever been silenced, for every family who had been doubted, for every little girl like Zara. Justice was finally here. That evening, back home, Zara sat on the porch with her mom. The sky was turning pink, the wind was soft, birds chirped in the distance. "Is it over now?" Zara asked. Celeste looked out at the sky. "Almost, baby, but we're going to keep going. We're going to help other kids, remember?" Zara nodded. Then she whispered, "I still feel sad sometimes. Even though people clapped for me, even though she's going to jail, I still feel heavy." Celeste wrapped an arm around her. "That's okay. Sadness doesn't disappear just because justice shows up. Sometimes it stays, but we don't let it stop us." They sat there for a while, holding hands. Quiet. Steady. Later that night, Zara opened a notebook and began writing a letter. She didn't know exactly what she wanted to say yet, but she knew the title. To the kids who feel invisible. The letter started simply, with the words written in a child's careful handwriting across a blank white page. "Dear kids who feel invisible, this is for you." Zara sat cross-legged on her bed, a pencil in her hand, and her notebook resting on a pillow. The soft glow of her reading lamp warmed the space around her. She paused for a moment, looking out the window at the city lights beyond. So much had happened. So many people had listened. But still her heart ached, not just for herself, but for every child who had ever been treated like she was that day in the store. She continued writing. "I know what it's like when someone looks at you and doesn't see you. They only see what they want to believe about you. They think you're not smart, or honest, or enough. But they're wrong, because you are enough. You always were." Downstairs, Celeste was in her study, reviewing the latest report from the Zara Protocol rollout. Over 50 major retailers had adopted the system. 27 school districts had begun new staff training funded by the Nightingale Foundation. And Celeste had just been invited to speak before Congress about national child protection policies. She should have felt proud, and she did. But she also felt something else, a sense of quiet responsibility. The world had heard Zara's voice, but it was what they did next that mattered. Suddenly, she heard the soft sound of Zara's footsteps at the top of the stairs. "Mommy?" Zara called out gently. Celeste stood up immediately. "What's wrong, baby?" Zara clutched her notebook to her chest. "Can I read you something?" "Of course," Celeste said, kneeling down so they were eye to eye. Zara opened her notebook and took a deep breath. She began to read. "Dear kids who feel invisible, I know what that feels like. When people ignore your smile or they talk over your words. When they think you can't be trusted or that you don't belong. I used to think I was the only one, but I'm not. And neither are you." Celeste blinked back tears. Zara's voice was soft but steady. "There was a day I was really scared. I went to buy something for my birthday, and someone thought I was bad just because of my skin. She didn't even ask my name. She just called me a thief. She yelled, and then she hit me." Zara looked up at her mom. "It's okay to cry," Celeste whispered. "I'm okay," Zara replied and continued. "That day, I thought maybe I didn't belong anywhere. But then people spoke up. Strangers, kids, adults. They said my name. They believed me. That changed everything. I want you to know something. You don't have to be loud to matter. You don't have to be big to be strong. You are not invisible. Not to me. She closed the notebook. Celeste stood, scooped her daughter into her arms, and held her tightly. That was the most beautiful letter I've ever heard, she whispered. Zara smiled into her mother's shoulder. Can we share it? Like in schools? For other kids? Yes, Celeste said without hesitation. We'll send it to every school that wants it. Every library, every community center, everywhere. That's how Zara's letter became more than just a message. It became a movement. A month later, schools across the country began Zara Day, a day where students wrote letters to kids who felt invisible. In one school, a group of fifth graders turned her letter into a musical performance. In another, a guidance counselor created a safe space called the Belonging Room, where students could go when they felt unseen. Zara's letter was translated into over 15 languages. A publishing house offered to turn it into a children's book with illustrations from diverse artists. Celeste agreed, but only if the proceeds would go to scholarships for underrepresented youth. One day, an envelope arrived at the Nightingale Foundation office. It was from a boy named Evan in Ohio. His handwriting was messy, his words uncertain, but his message was clear. Dear Zara, your letter made me cry. I'm white, and sometimes I get sad too because people think I'm weird. Your words helped me feel seen. Thank you. Zara read the letter 3 times. Then she looked at her mom and said, Can we invite him to speak with us at the next event? And they did. 6 months passed. The world didn't forget, not this time. Scarlett Ashford remained in prison, serving her time quietly. There were no press visits, no statements, no crowds waiting for her release. She had become a lesson, one, taught in classrooms, seminars, and corporate trainings. Not because of her power, but because of her downfall. The woman who tried to silence a child had become a symbol of everything that needed to change. Meanwhile, Zara was growing, not just in height, but in wisdom, confidence, and kindness. She still had nightmares sometimes. The scar of that day hadn't completely faded from her memory, but with each letter she received, each hand she held, each new child she spoke to, she healed a little more. Celeste continued using her voice in powerful ways. She spoke at universities, in courtrooms, in boardrooms. But she always said the same thing. The moment I couldn't answer my daughter's phone call was the moment I realized the world needed to change faster than I thought. And I will never stop pushing until every child knows they are seen, safe, and valued. Together, mother and daughter created new policies, new tools, and new hope. One of their proudest accomplishments was the launch of the Kindness app, an idea Zara came up with herself. It allowed children to anonymously report discrimination or bullying, alert trusted adults, and access uplifting videos and stories from other kids who had faced difficult moments. The app's most popular feature? Zara's voice. Short audio clips of Zara reading affirmations like, "You are not invisible. You deserve kindness. You belong here." On Zara's 9th birthday, a year to the day after everything happened, Celeste threw a quiet party. Just close friends, family, and a few children from the foundation. Zara stood in the center of the room and smiled shyly. "I don't want presents," she said. "Just letters, from anyone who wants to write to someone who feels invisible." The room was quiet for a moment. Then every adult, every child, began pulling out pens and paper. Some wrote silently, some cried, some shared them out loud. By the end of the night, a basket overflowed with handwritten notes full of hope, healing, and honesty. Zara picked one and read it aloud. "Dear someone, if no one has told you today, I see you. You matter. I'm glad you're here." And everyone clapped. Zara wasn't just the girl from the video anymore. She was a voice, a leader, a light. And even though she was still just a child, she had taught the world one of the most important lessons of all. No child should have to scream to be heard. Because when the world finally listens to children, really listens, it becomes a better place for everyone. Spring had returned to the city. Trees blossomed. The air smelled like rain and renewal. But for Celeste and Zara Nightingale, this season brought something deeper than flowers. It brought healing, momentum, and a powerful sense of purpose. 1 year ago, they had walked through pain and injustice. Now they were walking into the future, not just as mother and daughter, but as leaders of something that had touched millions. The Zara Nightingale Foundation had grown from a simple vision into a national powerhouse. What had started in a single press conference was now shaping policies across schools, stores, and even local governments. Its mission was simple: to ensure no child was ever humiliated, dismissed, or harmed in public spaces again, regardless of race, class, or background. But what made it different from other nonprofits wasn't its funding or its fame. It was that everything the foundation created came from the perspective of a child. Zara's voice wasn't just on the boardroom walls. It was in every policy. She sat in on meetings. She helped design flyers. She even gave feedback to psychologists, creating trauma guides for schools. Every time an adult used a word that felt too complicated or stiff, she would raise her hand and say, "I think kids wouldn't understand that." And they listened. Every time. Celeste, meanwhile, had hired a team of educators, child therapists, civil rights lawyers, and even former retail managers to build out the foundation's programs. They didn't just lecture companies about what went wrong, they taught them what to do better. How to identify unconscious bias, how to de-escalate tension with children, how to rebuild trust with customers. The Zara Protocol certification quickly became the new gold standard for companies who wanted families to feel safe. But the most special program, the one that touched Zara's heart the most, was the Letters of Light campaign. It had started with just a few classrooms, writing letters to kids who feel invisible. But now, the foundation printed and mailed thousands of those letters every month to children in shelters, foster homes, and hospitals. Each envelope contained real messages from real kids who had once felt alone, too. And each letter included a photo of Zara, smiling with her hand raised in a sign of peace and pride. "You're not invisible," the card read. "You matter to me." The foundation also partnered with teachers like Miss Reyes, who had started a voice circle in her third-grade classroom. Once a week, the students sat in a circle and talked about a moment they had felt overlooked and what helped them feel seen again. One little boy said, "I didn't think anyone cared that I was always quiet, but when I talked in the circle, everyone clapped." Another girl said, "I was scared to wear my natural hair to school, but Zara made me feel proud." These small victories weren't headlines, they weren't going viral, but they were changing lives, one child at a time. Meanwhile, Celeste's influence continued to grow. She testified before Congress with Zara at her side, urging lawmakers to pass the Child Respect Act, which would require federally funded institutions and public schools to follow guidelines that protected children from racial profiling and public humiliation. Her testimony was powerful, but Zara's was unforgettable. Dressed in a simple yellow dress, Zara stood in front of lawmakers and said, "I don't want anyone else to feel scared just for being a kid. I want adults to remember that we have hearts too, and we remember when they break." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The bill passed the House with overwhelming support. Celeste received invitations from universities, advocacy groups, and even the United Nations, but she turned most of them down. She wasn't building a media tour. She was building something better, something lasting, something rooted in everyday kindness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Zara sat on the balcony of their home legs dangling over the edge, her feet swinging. Celeste came outside with 2 cups of warm milk. They sat together in silence, watching the sky turn gold. "Mommy?" Zara said softly. "Yes, baby." "Do you think Scarlett ever thinks about me?" Celeste paused. "Maybe. Maybe not. But that's not your burden to carry, sweetheart. I don't want her to feel what I felt. But I also don't want her to forget." "You're wiser than most adults I know," Celeste said, brushing Zara's hair behind her ear. "What happened to you should never have happened, but you didn't let it break you. You turned it into something beautiful." Zara sipped her milk. "Sometimes I still wish none of it ever happened." Celeste nodded. "That's okay, too. It's okay to feel both, strength and sadness." Zara tilted her head. "Do you think we're doing enough?" Celeste smiled. "I think we've only just begun." Months later, the foundation hosted its first ever Belonging Conference, bringing together thousands of educators, kids, parents, and community leaders in one city to share tools for protecting and uplifting children. Zara opened the event by reading new letters from children around the world. One was from a girl in Brazil. "Dear Zara, I saw your story in my school. I never thought someone in another country could feel the same way I do. But you do. Thank you for helping me be brave." Another was from a boy in a wheelchair in Michigan. "They used to talk like I wasn't there. Now they ask me things, and I say, 'Zara says I belong too.'" Zara smiled as she read each letter, her voice trembling sometimes but never backing down. Afterward, as she walked off the stage, kids swarmed her with hugs and handshakes. Some called her Zed, others just held her hand without saying a word. She didn't need a crown or a spotlight. She had something better, the respect of a generation. As the conference came to a close, Celeste stood before the crowd and made one final announcement. The Zara Nightingale Foundation is launching the House of Light, a national healing center for children who have experienced public discrimination, a place to recover, to be heard, and to rebuild confidence. The room erupted in applause. Zara turned to her mom and whispered, "Can it have a wall full of letters?" Celeste smiled. "It'll have a room full of them." That night, back at the hotel, Zara opened her journal and wrote one last sentence. Before bed, "Maybe I was meant to be seen, not for what hurt me, but for what I helped build." And she was right. The girl once silenced had become the spark for a foundation of hope. Her name was no longer tied to a slap, but to a future where children are cherished, not doubted, where kids of every shade and size are protected, where silence is replaced by love, because Zara didn't just survive injustice, she turned it into something that would outlive it. It had been exactly 1 year since Zara Nightingale walked into TechZone Electronics with her mother's card and a heart full of excitement, only to leave in tears, holding her cheek, wondering what she had done wrong. And now, 1 year later, she stood on a stage surrounded by children, parents, and leaders from around the world. Not as a victim, but as a voice. Her voice, clear, brave, unshaken. The event was called the Day of Light, and it wasn't just a celebration. It was a promise. A promise that every child who felt overlooked, unheard, or unwanted would now have somewhere to go, someone to listen, something to believe in. Zara wore a white dress with golden stitching. On the chest, sewn by hand, was a single word: seen. As she stepped up to the microphone, the crowd grew quiet. Reporters stood still, cameras flashed, and Zara, now 9 years old and wiser than many adults, smiled gently before speaking. "Hi," she said, her voice soft. "I used to think being small meant being powerless, that if someone bigger yelled at you, you had to just take it. But I don't believe that anymore. Because I learned something important. When people see you, really see you, everything changes. And sometimes Being small just means you can grow into something even bigger. The crowd applauded, but Zara wasn't done. She reached into her pocket and unfolded a small, wrinkled piece of paper, her original letter. "Dear kids who feel invisible." She read the last line aloud. "You are not invisible. Not to me." The audience stood. Tears fell. Strangers hugged. In that moment, it was clear. Zara had become more than just the face of a movement. She had become its heart. After the speech, Celeste joined her on stage. She placed a gentle hand on Zara's shoulder, smiling through tear-glassed eyes. "This little girl," Celeste said, "reminded the world that justice isn't about punishment. It's about protection. It's about love. It's about listening when no one else will." Then, Celeste turned to the side curtain and raised her hand. Slowly, a large white sheet was pulled down to reveal the doors of the House of Light, the Foundation's new child-focused healing center. Painted across the building's entrance in big, bright letters were the words, "Every child deserves to be safe. Every voice deserves to be heard." Inside, children ran their fingers across the wall of belonging, covered in thousands of notes sent from across the world. "You matter. I see you. Keep going." These weren't just phrases. They were survival tools, anchors, for children who had been made to feel small, scared, or broken. Therapists trained in trauma care waited in warm rooms with toys, books, and listening hearts. Classrooms inside the center taught kids not just math and science, but also courage, kindness, and identity. There were no punishments here, no raised voices, only learning and light. On the back wall of the center's main hallway, one mural stood out among all others. It was a painting of Zara the day she cried in the store, half of her face in shadow, the other half glowing with golden light. Behind her stood a crowd of faceless people, some angry, some afraid, some silent. But in front of her stood one figure, her mother, hand outstretched, eyes blazing with love. Underneath, the artist had painted a single sentence: "The day she was hurt is the day she became unbreakable." Back home that night, Zara sat at her desk, flipping through letters from other children. One in particular caught her eye. It came from a boy in a small town she'd never heard of. "Dear Zara, I used to hide during recess. I thought no one saw me. But now, every time I feel scared, I remember your voice saying, 'I belong.' I joined the art club today. I even made a new friend. Thank you." Zara smiled and held the letter to her chest. Then she reached for her notebook. She wrote slowly, carefully, "Dear friend, you were never invisible. You were just waiting for someone to shine a light." She closed her eyes and thought about all the other children she hadn't met yet. The ones still sitting in the corners of classrooms. The ones too afraid to speak up. The ones being told by the world that they were less than enough. She couldn't stop it all, but she could keep showing up. She could keep writing. She could keep shining. Weeks later, Zara visited a school in Atlanta. The principal had renamed their library the Zara Room. When she walked inside, every child rose and clapped. Some wore t-shirts with her name. Others handed her drawings and letters. At the front of the room, a girl stood holding a stuffed bear. "I brought this for you," the girl said. "It's from when I used to cry a lot. I want you to have it now." Zara knelt and accepted the bear with both hands. "Thank you," she said. "But I think your bear still has some hugs to give. Maybe you can keep giving them to others." The girl beamed and hugged her again. Later that evening, as Zara and Celeste rode home, Celeste looked out the window and asked softly, "Do you ever wish none of it had happened?" Zara was quiet for a moment. Then she shook her head. "I used to," she said, "but not anymore. Because maybe I was meant to show other kids that their light matters. And light, once it shines, Never really leaves. Celeste reached over and held her daughter's hand, and they sat in that silence, the kind of silence that feels full, not empty, the kind of silence that only follows peace. In the end, Zara didn't ask for justice. She asked for belonging. She didn't seek revenge. She sought recognition, and she didn't just build a movement. She built a legacy, a light that never leaves. The end. Thank you for reading the complete 8-part story. White store manager slaps black kid, speechless when her mom arrives and she's the CEO.